I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's one of those things. I've been in the technical recruiting business for a long time. I would venture to say there's some of you in this room that I can honestly say that I've been technical recruiting longer than you've been born, or I've been alive. And I was wondering how many people are actually going to show up to see a recruiter is coming. It's not a cool React.js talk or anything like that. But what I wanted to do, and what I'm really, really excited about tonight is, when Thomson Technologies, which is the company I've been part of for the last 20 years, when we want to share things about career opportunities, it's not going to be a commercial about how great staffing companies are and recruiters. I'm sure you all have plenty of stories about all the phone calls and a lot more than that. But it's really our opportunity to just kind of share some really the things we see in the market, as well as statistics and some trends which hopefully will be useful to you. And while I'm sure the coding that you do is something I would not be able to interpret, I only didn't get past HTML myself, but I will say that one of the things that we hope to do is kind of give you some tips and some ideas that can help frame your future from a development standpoint, because there are a lot of and not just development, but in IT or whatever route you want to take your technology, because there's a lot of considerations that are important besides the talent that you possess. So we're going to talk about that tonight as well. So we're going to talk about career considerations in Java. And tonight, if you haven't gotten a ticket from Priscilla also works with Thomson Technology. She's my partner in crime tonight. We are going to be giving away, just for being here tonight, a Raspberry Pi. And yeah, it does come with that cool keyboard, which I would need. I'm sure some of you don't need the keyboard, you just need the board itself, and you can plug it right in, but I would need the keyboard. So just in case, or if maybe someone wanted to share it with one of their 15-year-olds or children to learn how to program, it'd be a really cool tool. So here's a few, I guess I can't say I've lived too interesting of a life, but at the same time, just a short bio of some of the highlights. People ask me how I got into the staffing industry. And the long and short of it is, I sold David Thompson a watch, and he offered me a job in his basement. And that really is the truth. David and I knew each other from mutual circles. I was trying to sell these watches to make 15% commission. He bought some, and when he heard I was moving to Atlanta, he said, I can teach this guy how to recruit. And the rest is history. I've been there since 1996, August of 1996. I've been with Thomson Technologies, a great organization, and I'm very blessed to be part of them. This is the actual watch, by the way. Yeah. And we did buy quite a bit, and I did make quite a bit of commission, too, because we used to give them out as one-year anniversary gifts for many years until we changed our logo. My fancy title is Chief Recruiting Officer, but I still spend a good portion of time in the trenches. If during Q&A you want to know why Chief Recruiting Officer means anything or what value it could have to an organization, you can ask me then. Another just tidbit, my wife Donna works harder than me, even though I spelled that wrong, as she raises our 6 children, including our 2-year-old twins. So as you can tell, I am really excited to be with you tonight because I get the evening off. So this is a big deal. So thanks, Donna. So some of the discussion topics we're going to discuss this evening is we're going to talk about IT career trends in general. Is IT still a good place to be? Some of this may sound a little obvious, but we'll just talk a little bit, put a little fact behind it. Java career trends that we're seeing. Future Java job considerations. Salary survey data specific to Java. Preparing for success. How do you organize and prepare for your career? And what are the things that should be considered in a situation like that? And then we're going to have some Q&A. So I do have a lot of items to go over. If you have a question that you just can't wait for, please go ahead and ask. And it doesn't have to be even pivotal. If you want clarification on something, please stop me and ask me. And I'm hoping to have some Q&A at the end. Like I said before we get to this, this is not a staffing company commercial. But at the same time, I want to consider myself as open of a book as I possibly could be. If you've ever, at the end of your Q&A, if you had any experiences with recruiters that you want to say, man, why did this happen? Or from a career standpoint, some of the things that you have heard but you want to verify, please ask me any questions. If I don't know the answer, I'm not going to make one up. I may call on one of you to answer the question, and at the same time, I just want it to be as interactive as possible as well. So I'm going to share some facts with you this evening and some important items from a career standpoint, and then I'm hoping that we can all learn a lot tonight and move forward and be the best we can be. So I'm glad we've talked about DevNexus, and this is the right group to do this with. So Thomson Technologies has been a sponsor of DevNexus probably for the last 3 years. And one of the things that we do at our table, how many of you stopped at our table at DevNexus? A few of you? I think we have the coolest prizes. I do. We have the most prizes, and I think we have the coolest prizes. I try to always prepare every year to get them. And this year we gave away a Xbox, tablet, glasses, a Nintendo Classic, and a few other things as well. But one of the things that's really important to us as we go to the DevNexus conference is we don't have this belief that you are all there because you want a job. In fact, on the contrary, you're there to learn and be educated. And at the same time, at Thomson Technologies, as the Chief Recruiting Officer, I want to make sure that that these people that we serve in the community, that we're as up to date in terms of your needs as well. And as a result of that, we like to ask some survey questions. So we had the privilege of actually getting, when we tailored it down to some of the duplicates that came in, because some people really wanted the prize really, really badly. But we had 479 career surveys that filled out at DevNexus. And this is your population and your people and the Atlanta market. And as far as the validity, I'm not going to quote statistics because it's not a strength of mine, but when you get 25% of the conference that reply to survey questions, you have a little bit of data that you can share. So I'll be sharing that throughout the evening as well, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. Java, oh. Woo. Sorry, I'm getting used to the clicker. So, Java developers are in great shape. And this is, first of all, how many of you develop in Java? Okay. So this is something that you already know, that Java is very, very popular. You probably, like I said, get your phone ringing off the hook. You try to probably hide. If you ever posted your resume, beware your numbers in the database for years, so you've probably changed your phone numbers and have multiple email addresses, and I don't blame you. Because while you're out there trying to produce good quality work for your employer, you're probably getting constantly bombarded about IT opportunities. And the bottom line is that you really are set up in a very good position. You know, this is my own analogy, and maybe some of you would agree, and I'm sure there's probably technical reasons why you wouldn't. But Java, in a sense, is being a core development language, very much like C. For years, the C language, as it related to the job market, was the language to know. Then C++ came out in the early 90s, and then in the mid to late 90s emerged Java. But Java, the lifespan of its popularity, it actually is the #1 programming language on many of the different surveys that you see out on the website. And we'll look at some other statistics to back that up today as well. But the good news for all of you in reference to what we're going to talk about is you're doing the right thing. I mean, you have a core to your career that's going to have an opportunity to take you really in any direction you want from a technology standpoint. Not many people get up in the morning and they get to say, I get to go in and do what I'm passionate about every day, and then take that and build my career off of that. I know that's one of the reasons I've stayed in recruiting this long, is that I still love, it's not just because I have 6 kids at home, but I just love going to work every day, and I really enjoy it because every day is a new challenge, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. So the good news is you picked the right profession. I was just thinking about this resume I once saw, and I wish I kept it for the life of me. You know how your Java developers or the Java language is in great shape from a career standpoint? This one person had the unluckiest technology choices. He started out with Clipper. Then he moved into, I think it was Progress 4GL. Then he followed that with Delphi. And then he ended it with Power Builder. So all of those technologies came and went over the course of time. I don't have the resume, but it was one of those things that it was like, oh man, talk about hitting every landmine in the minefield. I don't remember. I wish I had kept it. But so we're definitely in a good place. So how is the IT job market nationally? According to the U.S. News and World Reports, and I try to put my URL references on the bottom for when you get the slides, okay? The U.S. News and World Reports every year comes out with just the job growth and what it looks like. Last year was a big year for IT, actually. We hit the top 10, I think, in 3 or 4 different categories. This year, I think only the systems analysts made the top 10. What other profession do you think overtakes technology from a job growth standpoint in this country? Healthcare. Yeah, healthcare basically. They typically almost always own the show. But these are the top 5 technology areas to be in, and that's as a computer systems analyst, which is loosely defined, software developer, IT manager, and web developer, and the network architect are all areas of extreme growth that they forecast. And they do this based on the number of job openings. They do this based on the supply and demand of resources, and of course, not to mention compensation. So there's a big formula they put together. So the IT job market is doing exceptionally well. When unemployment is high, IT is typically the lowest on that list. I mean, even when we were going through a rough economy, IT opportunities were still out there. I mean, it's been a long time since people were sitting at home in IT waiting for opportunities to come. Experienced IT professionals, usually in the, depending on the skill set, very rarely would there not be multiple potential offers on somebody's plate. So what are the best IT job markets in the country? So I like to refer to dice.com. How many of you have heard of Dice? Okay, good. The reason why Dice is valuable is Dice actually is only an IT job posting board. So there's probably a few exceptions here and there, but in general, if the job's out on Dice, then you know it's an IT role. So what I did was I just looked on March 20th. I can also look at the number of jobs in real time, and these are the number of jobs that were available at any given time. Now, this is not an exact number. Have you ever gotten a call from a recruiter about a job, and then 2 minutes later you got a call from another recruiter about the same job, and then 3 minutes later you got another call about the same job, and everyone's recruiting for AT&T or something? Yeah. That is very, very common. So there's definitely some duplicates related to this, but at the same time, it's a snapshot of how many jobs are available. I bring this to your attention. None of this should be a surprise. Silicon Valley, New York Metro, and New York Metro also includes North Jersey, so that's a very, very big area. This is a 50-mile radius out of the cities that you see. But Atlanta over here, and I don't know how well it's showing up, but we're definitely in one of the top technical economies here. So we have a really, really good situation. The other great thing about Atlanta is that, and you'll see when we look at some of the salary stuff later, is that you can live in Atlanta and you can own a house, as opposed to somebody who does pretty well in the Silicon Valley who really can't own anything, even at what would be considered a very good salary there. So I'm sure there's pluses and minuses in why people go there and come here, but at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities. Atlanta is a usually a great service economy, great technical economy, and we have the opportunity to live in an area where the cost of living, though it's rising for sure, certainly is still one of the lower cost of living areas that are in the country. What was that? You know what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. You know what? Oh boy. Yes. Did you win the Raspberry Pi? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I was. My number was off. Thanks for sharing that, though. I appreciate it. So here's another way to look at Java job trends, and I'm going to try to explain this a little bit. So how many have heard of Indeed.com? It is a mega job aggregator. Millions and millions and millions of jobs across the world are being posted on this. And there's a place where you can actually run a job trend indicator. And I have picked 4 languages to display here: C#, Java, Ruby, and Python. And the number on the side here, by the way, is the percentage of jobs that include the skill set. So is it only Java developers? No, it includes Java architects, it includes IT managers that have Java in their environment, it includes everything. But that's all the jobs in the world that they aggregate, which again are millions and millions and millions. So it shows a trend over a few years, 2014, 15, 16, and 17. Clearly, this is why Java's in good shape, is that Java is very much the highest in demand of any other software language in terms of employment. Now, if you look at the most popular languages, still surprisingly enough. C and C++ are up there on the list, as you can imagine, and Java is right up there with it. Actually, I think Java on some reports has become first place this year and last year, and C and C++ went to 2. But again, C and C++ wouldn't have the most job opportunities. So while a language may be popular, it's not always a career. It's not always advantageous for your career to focus in it, and that's something we'll talk about as well. Any questions here?
Yep. Where's JavaScript?
I didn't put JavaScript on there purposely, just because I wanted to pick 4 languages. But JavaScript is, for a while, JavaScript actually exceeded Java. I think I did run it here as a sample. I just picked 4. JavaScript, and I don't want to say it's falling behind, but as you may already, and many of your folks at DevNexus have already learned this as well, is that JavaScript has now been segregated into frameworks and to front-end libraries and so forth. So people don't even call. I mean, I see JavaScript don't mention JavaScript. They just talk about Angular or React. It's just one of those. So that could have something to do with the statistics, but certainly JavaScript is broad and extremely popular. So let's talk about Atlanta. So Atlanta Java-related jobs, and this was as of yesterday. So Java had 525 job descriptions that mention Java, okay, obviously to different degrees of importance. But we only have 2,644 jobs. That means that 20% of the IT jobs that are in Atlanta make mention of the need for some knowledge, potential usage of the Java programming language. So again, Java being a core language encompasses many, many different areas. And as a result of that, gives you, as Java professionals, whether you be a developer, maybe it's your tertiary language, for whatever reason, it gives you options and paths that you can go on that other people can't. So that's exciting to see. JavaScript, also very popular, 413 jobs. By the way, 193 of these jobs also have Java in it as well. So it's probably no surprise to you that looking for Java web application developers and Java front-end developers. C#, 201 jobs actually mention C#. Again, Microsoft's still very much in demand, still a lot of usage. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but you can just see based on just the number of job openings. Python, no surprise, is high up there as well, and Python branches out very much like Java, especially in the days of DevOps, just as a multi-purpose language that's really replaced the Perl of the old days with a language that really does a lot, and Python has a lot of openings. Interestingly enough, you won't find so many Python development openings. I mean, if you want to be a Python application developer, you're going to, the jobs are much fewer than what you'll see in terms of how Python is being utilized in IT from a scripting standpoint, from a DevOps standpoint, from a data science standpoint, and so forth. Ruby on Rails. Interestingly enough, Ruby's remained pretty steady in terms of demand. It used to be considered, that was the up and coming language. I think from what I've seen, and this is again, I'm not technical enough to make this opinion, but from what I've read, apparently Node.js and Golang are really taking some of the steam away from that from a development language. Granted, still very high in demand, but not considered as cutting edge as it was. But then here are the other areas, the growth areas. Big data, 127 jobs, 63 have also required Java. AWS, 163 jobs, 53 of those require Java experience. And then, of course, you see your DevOps, Android, and the one that a lot of people want to get involved in Docker and microservices. So that's a snapshot of just some of the Java-related jobs, real time, as of last night in Atlanta, that are available for people. Clearly, there's not enough talent to fill these roles in our local markets, and candidates have a lot of opportunities if you want to be a candidate. But as IT professionals, when you're ready, there's just so much opportunity for you to look at. So what Java trends are we seeing? First, I put that in quotes, just Java, because there really is no just Java. I mean, when I say that, we're looking for a Java programmer. We still get a lot of roles open for Java developers, vanilla. Now, I will say that there's been a little bit of a decline in this, because that's not where the biggest growth areas for Java are, because there are a lot of competing programming languages out there. There's a lot of functional languages that are lighter weight that can maybe accomplish the same thing at different with more ease. For whatever, right now, I guess if you look at the business problems that are out there and you look at what language is the best, Java is a great tool, but it may not be the best for that business problem. So people are looking into how to be as technology agnostic as possible and still meet the business needs. This was a big one at DevNexus in terms of what people wanted to get into. Front-end Java development. That was something that was really a desire for a lot of people who maybe spent a lot of years on the back end and want to go now to the front end where we see a lot of openings. Microservices, we talked about how they got the big room at DevNexus, big data, no SQL, cloud development, DevOps, functional programming languages, and even home automation. It was interesting. I saw an Apple opening today. The next generation, they were advertising for somebody to program the next generation of Siri. And I guess, Alexa is much, I think, let me get sure I get this right. Actually, Google Home's the smartest. But I think that, that competition for home automation is really is out there, and they want Siri to be able to do a lot of different things. So they're looking for a Java developer at Apple to make those things happen from a hardware standpoint as well, and to make that happen. So a lot of cool opportunities. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So because I'm a technical recruiter, I must think that you need to use a technical recruiter to find a good job. And here's my one graphic. It's not true. It's not. In fact, many of you will find career opportunities and never talk to a recruiter. Because, and I mean this sincerely, you're here tonight. This is probably your best resource, is the way you network with one another in terms of finding opportunities, the people that you meet at these meetings that obviously have more than just a interest, because you're here and you're not home watching whatever's on television tonight. You're here to learn about your profession, and you're here to meet and talk to other people about what you're passionate about. As a result of that, that truly is your best resource to finding your next opportunity. Yes, I'll even say it better than technical recruiters sometimes, because of the fact that if you meet somebody here tonight and you have a job opening, isn't that great? You can go back and just by a referral find your next opportunity. So that's really cool. So this is something that's always gotten under my skin. I've kind of learned to live with it. Have you ever look at the internet for opportunities and they ask if they could, in their job calls for a Java rock star? Did you ever see that? And I actually wrote a blog on this a few years ago. It was one of the ones that got the most hits, but probably too long. But my premise was I couldn't stand the term rock star, not because I didn't think there was definitely talent, but how many people would really as somebody with your craft, is that really what you feel like? Like, would you answer the ad that said, looking for Java rockstar? Could you imagine if somebody actually called the HR office and said, hello, I'm a Java rockstar. I'm calling to apply. It's just not, it's just not, for Betty. So it's a matter of terminology, but at the same time, I have a lot of clients that like the use of the term. So eventually I had to get with the program. But I still, every time, I cringe a little bit every time I hear it. And also, rock stars, they want to get paid a lot of money. Now, so if you're like making the average job, let's say you're making a good salary, but an average software engineering salary. If you're a rock star, you should be like quadrupling that, shouldn't you? It really should be there. Sometimes one of my favorite lines is, if they're a rock star, I'll give instead of 65, we'll go up to 70K. Well, then we have to explain to them that that's not exactly something that's going to attract and keep a rock star. So, at the same time, but here's something here's the reality of this though. Is that when you are looking for an opportunity, and you post your resume, or you start sending your resume someplace for the first time, and you say, I'll just send my resume to these 5 companies, and all 5 of them respond to your resume. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be that your skill set is being appreciated, And it's very, very, and it's very, very exciting that your career obviously has some value to many opportunities that are out there. I'm sure many of you can interview every day if you really, really wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. It's kind of tedious. But at the same time, there is a nice feeling. We also do have to make sure it doesn't go to our heads. They're calling us rock stars, and they're not me, just you. But they're calling you out in terms of your skills, and these are things you work hard for. So that you should feel very, very good about that, and how you can really help organizations solve business problems and still further your career for what's important to you. So I want to stop here for just a moment. I gave a lot of numbers. I gave a lot of I maybe made some assumptions that you may or may not disagree with. Is there any questions or thoughts before I go any further? Yes.
Yeah. The statistics for the DevOps jobs.
Yes.
The way that people talk nowadays, they're always looking for DevOps people. So I
Yes.
think there'd be a higher number of jobs for DevOps people.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's like unicorns at this point.
Well, the problem is that the number of that's how hard they are to fill in terms of, those jobs stay open for a long time. I would say, it's not uncommon for us to have a DevOps role open for 3 to 6 months for a company, because the value, it used to be, people who had made those job classifications, especially when they were more development oriented than the operations oriented individual that they're looking for. There's a lot. The dual skill set is very, very difficult to find. So in terms of the number, be honest with you, I was a little surprised when I saw that as well. But at the same time, not everyone uses the term DevOps. That's the other thing. So I had a client say to me not too long ago when they gave me some feedback, I'm not interested in this candidate because they don't call themselves DevOps. Well, that's not what they call themselves, but they've been working with Puppet deployments for the last 3 years. They have 5 years of software engineering experience and 4 years of Python development experience, and they understand continuous integration, and they're working with Jenkins. All of the things that they want in the ad, but they just don't have the title DevOps. So people are a little confused. So there's a lot of things still to be defined in that process. JavaScript had that problem for a long time because in the old days, back when I started, JavaScript was like a graphic, artsy, cutesy mouse over language. And then when JavaScript suddenly became a important front-end development language, that transition in terms of how to quantify somebody's JavaScript experience with the challenge, DevOps is going through that same cycle right now in terms of employers trying to define what they're actually looking for. Because the job descriptions look the same, but the emphasis many times is not.
Should you if you have those skills, should you cluster them under DevOps? No.
You can do that, and I think that keywords are really important. As long as anything you put on your resume has to be backed up with fact. Yes, but the answer yes. It'll help you get more hits by.
You have Jenkins continuous integration, Puppet or Pivot Cloud.
Yep.
That's all DevOps.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. And now when DevOps is, it all depends on who's searching for you and if it's a general term. It would be to your benefit for a recruiter who just started yesterday and says, okay, now you're just starting recruiting, go ahead and find us a DevOps person. They'll come up with your resume as opposed to being able to look at your resume and see that you're a match for the opportunity. So that would be a good move. Anybody else? Okay. So let's talk about organizing your job search. First of all, like I mentioned before, one of the biggest things you can do is the networking that you're doing with each other. It's huge. I can't put a bigger emphasis upon that. When you think you may be looking for something at some point in time, this is really the place to be first, in my opinion. Ensure you have an updated resume. Now, this is something that a lot of people do. They usually will keep like a long version and a short version. And my encouragement to you is anytime, because you're a technologist and because you have a combination of both soft skills and hard skills, I will tell you that the emphasis in terms of what you have done with your hardcore programming and hands-on experience from a technology standpoint, the projects that you start and complete successfully should be documented as you go through life. And then the reason for that is because you don't want to, 5 years later, want to think back to all the things you've done, because you need almost like a repository to be able to pull that from, so that you can best represent what you've done. Because unfortunately, your resume is going to be reviewed by someone who's not necessarily as technically savvy as the hiring manager themselves. And many times they may not have any technical savvy at all. They could be just the person looking for DevOps and they don't know what the skills involve. And as a result of that, you could wind up in a rejection pile when you shouldn't be. Unfortunately, the great thing about technology is the speed and how it can classify people with keywords and put you in groupings. The bad part is if everything's not there exactly, you can, again, be in the wrong pile. So being able to evaluate your resume and being able to speak to the skills that you have experience with is really important. So as you go, even if you're not looking for a job, just use it as almost like a technical diary for yourself, if you want to call it that.
I wouldn't mind mentioning, a lot of companies have yearly, self-assessments, and that's actually a good time to do it because you have to do it anyway for the company.
Yes.
So take that information and update your resume once a year.
Absolutely, and just being able to do that during the time of when you have your review and your self-assessment, that's really a perfect time to look back at what your accomplishments are and really reflect on where you are right now and where you want to be. GitHub and Stack Overflow and LinkedIn. Let's talk about those. So it used to be that if you're a graphic designer and you don't, or a web designer and you don't have an online portfolio, I don't care if you have the best looking resume in the entire world. I can't help you, because it really comes down to your portfolio of work. Now, we are getting more and more requests in our office for developers to have their own portfolio of work, which brings up the whole proprietary issue and so forth. But but if you're passionate about it, you should be doing it on your own, right? So one of the things that's what we're told anyway. So one of the things that's important is really evaluate your LinkedIn profile. First of all, if you don't want to be contacted, about jobs and stuff like that, I definitely tone down your LinkedIn profile. If you want to keep it up to date and make it powerful and get constant inquiries and get 5,700 emails a month, keeping it like your resume is something that you can do. But LinkedIn is a really, really important professional tool. As my recruiting team lives in it. We cross-reference anything. I'll give you a little tip. If you put confidential on your resume on Dice and you posted it because you don't want anyone to know what company you work with, LinkedIn's on my next screen. I know where you work. So it's amazing how many people have confidential. It's like, okay, he works at so-and-so, or she works there. Only reason I share that with you is if you want to, just really for your own protection and so forth, in the confidentiality of your job hunt, because that's really important. But GitHub, your involvement in projects, your involvement in answering questions on Stack Overflow, these are all part of your technical portfolio. This represents the hard skills that you bring to the table. A lot of our clients want to see what your code looks like, just so they understand if your coding, your approach to coding and how you document it and your style is going to fit into their environment. And it's a really easy evaluation. Instead of going to 3 interviews and then you take this assessment home, and then they find out that you didn't code quite the way that they wanted you to, and you spent 4 to 5 hours interviewing, a lot of times they can look at that and say, wow, this is the type of individual that we want. And then it's a much more streamlined process. So anything that you can do to represent legally your abilities and your code, that is going to be to your benefit to have your best work out there. And when I say best work, again, nothing proprietary, but shows that if there's a project that you worked on that you're passionate about. Those are the kinds of things. If you're working on open source, you're working in the open source community, having that available to potential employers to see your involvement, that usually goes a really long way and helps through the cumbersome interview process. Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking when you talk about GitHub, I mean, some of us have side projects, and that's a way to document your side projects. But
Absolutely.
And keeping documentation of when they ask you, what have you overcome, and maybe you're in kind of a dull job, but you've got a side project that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
That can be helpful.
Absolutely, and that's where you can also, a lot of people want to sometimes have a skill set, unlike Java, that maybe it's another part of technology that doesn't really, you can't really leverage your current skill set to get to where you want to be. The side project is a perfect way to do that because it allows you to come up with deliverables that can be viewed and then can land you that next step from a career, especially if you want to make that transition within technology or another area. So that's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that. Yes?
I was just going to say too that I don't know if GitHub just added this or if this has been there for a while, but I worked at a company before that used GitHub but privately as an organization. So GitHub has a thing that shows how many commits you do per month and everything, your graph. But they have an option now that it won't show what the commits are for that private organization, but it'll still show your statistics as far as how many commits you're doing. Interesting. So you kind of like make that part of it public, that you are actually, you have committed code to GitHub.
That's great to know. So if you're using GitHub with your organization, the proprietary information stays proprietary, and you still are credited with your with the work that you did. I like that. That's great. The statistics are shown publicly, right? Right. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. So, another thing you can do, especially if you're more junior or maybe uncertain about your skill set in a particular area. You can call a company like Thompson Technologies, my company, and I have lots of different skills assessments that I'll send you for free. That I can send you to do it. If you want to take a Ruby assessment or a Java assessment or a Python assessment, I'll send you a test that sometimes we don't always use them for all of our clients because I don't believe necessarily that standardized testing is the best way to do that. But at the same time, if let's say you want to see how good am I compared to a certain population. Send me an email. I'll send you an assessment, and then I'll send you the results, and you use it as a tool for yourself for your career. It's that simple. If you get a 90-something, if you're better than 90% of the people in a software development language, that's always great for you to include with your resume when you send it out. So feel free. And the other one is preparing professional references. This is really, really important. You don't want references. It used to be that recruiters would check references prior to even submitting your resume. Very few agencies will do that anymore. Because first of all, it's a lot of work to check references, but at the same time, these are your these are part of your network that you want to ensure that you use only at the appropriate times. You do not want to give out your references to everybody that asks for your references. That's really, really, really important. You want to ensure that there is value that'll be provided to your personal career. So many times you want to at least wait till you are requested for an interview for a job that you are extremely interested in prior to sharing any of your professional references. That's my advice to you. But something else that's a huge time saver for your references and a huge time saver for any place you send your resume is try your best to get a reference letter on company letterhead with a real signature whenever you're either finishing a contract opportunity or you're finishing with an employer that you've done some work for a while. And the reason is that if you include your reference letters with your resume for opportunities that you want, I can tell you as the person in charge of recruiting for my company, your resume is at the top of the pile. Why? Because I have validation from a signed third-party resource that you are who you say you are, and it backs up what is said on your resume. And you have just saved me and my company hours of time. So having those available to you is actually going to give you an edge over others that just send out their resume in many occasions because, again, you have already taken the time to validate. Not only does your resume say something on a piece of paper that they have to validate, now it says, wow, we have half of our work done for us if they're interested in moving forward with this candidate. That's a huge benefit to you, and it can put you at the top of the pile.
Yes. So how many should you have and how old should they be?
So that's the thing. You want to keep them as recent as humanly possible. So if once you're getting past 5 years, unless you've been with the same company for 5 years, they're too old. A lot of times I'll get references from somebody that'll be like 5 years ago, 8 years ago, and the person's had 7 or 8 jobs since then. It's something to consider that, what has this person done recently? Because they're not being evaluated necessarily on the skills they had back then, but the more current skill set. So the more current references, the better.
What about companies that have a policy where they don't give references? And
Yeah.
they tell you they refuse to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really, really tough. I'll tell you that there is and I am not a lawyer, but from what I understand, there is a legal way to get around that, and that is that you can ask them for a personal reference off the clock and speak to you personally. If they're willing to do that because you have a good relationship with them, they're not doing it in representing the company, and chances are you're not getting a letter on company letterhead. But at the same time, that's important. But usually, most people can find somebody that they've worked with that can do that. And I'll tell you, as a recruiter, when I've called references like that, and they said, listen, they have a no reference policy, 50% of the time, they'll give me the reference, and 50% of the time, they won't. And I hate to make judgment calls based on that, because I usually make them, put a little bit of guilt on them. And I say, in order for them to move forward with this opportunity, the client does need to review references. Now, I know your policy, but don't you want to help Jim here? Or don't you want to help Bob?
A good point though is to always check with your references before you.
Oh my gosh, that's a given. Yeah, don't.
I know a lot of people that have.
I know, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on out there, like even showing up without a resume to an interview is very commonplace now. Very, very commonplace. It's very it's shocking. But you're right. I mean, don't put someone down as a reference who you do not let them know you're going to be a reference, right? Because that's when they backfire on you. That's when the bad references come. Oh yeah, him? Wouldn't work with him again, or her again. Yes.
How effective are the references that people write up for you on LinkedIn? Like if you have a peer or something?
Yeah, that's mixed. So I think references on LinkedIn are a good indicator, but it depends what they say. I mean, some of them look so canned. I always try to be if I can't be specific about somebody I've worked with, frankly, I just won't write the reference. I don't want to saying I worked with so and so. They have great customer service. They are second to none. I see one person write second to none on every LinkedIn reference they leave. I think you have to look at the reference individually and try to see if you see something there that's of value other than something just broad and general. Because the more, it's kind of like if somebody gives you a compliment. If I say, great job, that's nice, but if I am specific about what I'm complimenting you on, that truly is of value. So I think it's okay to refer to those things and refer to your references under those circumstances, though. Does that make sense? So this is a little bit on organizing your search. Now, this is the second half of what I want to talk about tonight, and this is one of the things that I have talked about at other user groups, and it's really what we use at Thomson Technologies as a way of challenging IT professionals to really consider where they are from a career standpoint. And this is our methodology, and we call it the TLC4. And TLC4 an acronym for technology, leadership, compensation, commute, career path, and culture. And the reason I have a bar graph here is that whether you know it or not, the reason why any of you outside of layoff is going to be looking for a new opportunity potentially has to do with what I refer to as your TLC4. I'd be happy to add another letter that would make it much more complex if there was there, but these 6 categories really say it all. And the reason I put a bar graph here is because in every stage of life and for every individual, nobody's TLC4 is the same. It's something that has to be evaluated every few years. And when you look at, so you have here, you may have a T that, meaning that technology, for example, is the most important motivator from a career standpoint. Or you might be at a stage of life where technology is important, but hey, you can't work on those long deliverables that'll take you 8, 9 o'clock at night 4 days a week because you got 6 kids. Or then you have, listen, I'm in my destination job right now. I enjoy what I do, and I'm enjoying life, and I love my 7 weeks vacation. So, hey, listen, it's legacy code, but you know what? I'm really enjoying life. So that's where your T here, for example, would be there. So I have the barcode on each of the descriptions I give here, just to remind you that each of you have a barcode for each of these areas, and you all have a TLC4. And my challenge for each one of you this evening is for you to go away and consider what your TLC4 is. And here's the other big part of this, is that you, not only do you have a TLC4, your company has a TLC4. They have the same barcodes, and certain things are important in their environments and certain things are not. Does that match up with you? Are you in the right place? Are you unrecruitable? Well, I'll tell you, if you have a big green bar under T, L, C, 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 and C, you're unrecruitable. I don't want to, frankly, I don't want, I certainly want to have a network with you, but I don't have any high expectations because life is perfect as it relates to these 6 most important career categories that we have. It's when we have some of this going on and how much impact that has at your life at a particular time, that's when it becomes an issue. Make sense? So let's talk about the TLC4 and how you can apply that. Technology. So the technology you are passionate about is specifically why this is an IT-focused acronym. It's a primary career motivator for many in IT. I mean, I hope that nobody's in this just for the money or just for something else. Because you know what? You gotta go to work every day. You spend more time at work than you do with your own family. You better love what you do, otherwise you're not gonna enjoy yourself too much. And the life stage can impact your T, like I talked about before. This is really important. If I know I've talked to people before. It's like, boy, if I was 10 years younger in my development career, I would love that opportunity. But right now, my environment's fine, and the culture where I work, I really like the people I work with. My boss is great. I don't want to rock the boat right now because I've got college to pay for 2 of my kids. That's, the T can become less important if your company doesn't necessarily have the highest T, and you're not getting the best. Nothing's perfect, right? I mean, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're getting what's important to you. Any questions about the T and what that and what it means and some considerations there? Technology is a huge driver. It also can be a pitfall, especially for newer developers. I'll say this now in case I forget to say it later. I recommend and highly recommend that somebody, unless it's just a bad situation, your first IT development job, you stay in it for as long as you possibly can, meaning up to maybe 2-3 years. And start a strong foundation for yourself so that you can get a good career boost with putting some stability in your resume and your experience, and making sure you're completing projects and making sure you're finding mentorship. Even if it's not the tech, stay as current with the technology as you possibly can, but in your first IT job, stability is really, really key when you're looking for your next job. That makes you the more attractive candidate, as opposed to somebody who's going from 3 months to 6 months to 1 year somewhere. And there's a lot of temptation out there to switch jobs very, very quickly. I'm not saying it's wrong for everybody. I'm just saying long term, it's usually a very good place to be. Yes?
Have you seen the opposite problem if somebody's had a job too long?
Absolutely. Hey, I'm one of those problems. 21 years with Thomson Technologies? Who wants this? There's a mentality out there. For example, if you work for like one of the big boys, let's say it's an IBM or an AT&T, and you're in a siloed organization, and you're maybe just like doing a code. Java. They say, well, the Java coders there, they just maybe do one piece of it. They're not doing full life cycle development across the whole application. It's a mentality that they won't fit into a smaller or mid-sized environment. From those, that's a lot of time where we see that you can be somewhere too long. That's why staying on top of the latest trends in technology is really important. Because I'll tell you, when it's not an issue is if your company truly is on the cutting edge of technology, and you're playing a role in that. And when they're rolling out new, if you were there for when e-commerce came out, and then now you're implementing microservices and Docker with them, you're not going to have trouble finding an opportunity. It doesn't matter how long you've been there. But at the same time, there will be a little bit of a stigma that, boy, will they understand any other environment but the one that they're in? So yeah, that has been an issue for some, not all, but making sure that you're staying on top of technology and it doesn't become stagnant for you is really important, and that's the responsibility of the person. There's another question?
You kind of hit what I was headed toward.
Sure.
With technology, you could be comfortable and satisfied with where you're at, but then things could go right by you.
Right.
You sit still and everything is great, but this one company that you relied on
Yeah.
no longer wants that, can do things with that technology, and no place else can. So
Exactly.
you don't maintain currency with what's going on. And
Absolutely. That's why staying on top of technology trends and side projects can really be a lifesaver for you, especially if you know that your organization is meeting, your company is meeting a lot of your other needs and your other TLC4s, but maybe they're not meeting the T. You really got to evaluate what that's going to do for the next step in your career. So some DevNexus statistics I promised you. One of the questions I asked at DevNexus is what technologies people are using now, but more importantly is what do they want to use next? So this is just from some of your peers. 30% of the people wanted to utilize big data, and that was something that was an important step for their Java careers. Sorry if I'm in somebody's way here, I'll try to move. 29% Angular and React, that's what they wanted to move their skill set towards. 23% wanted to move to the cloud, 20% Docker and microservices. So one thing about the group at DevNexus is that the people going to that conference obviously have a passion for technology. Thus, they were at a technical conference, right? And they're not, just doing the daily grind at the office. So that's one of the statistics we were able to get from the 479 people that we spoke to. So leadership. Do you like your boss? This is what it comes down to. Leadership can mean a lot of different things. Company management style. Have you ever had a manager that was in it for themselves, and then you had a manager that was in it for the team, right? And there's a lot of different management styles out there. There's, empowering and autocratic, and the ones that if you even say the word telecommute, you get written up for it, and things like that. But leadership, a very, very important component of how successful you're going to be. Trust for your leaders impact the L. And I would say that the good news for people in IT is because IT professionals if you have a lousy boss, there are options for you. But it's amazing to me how some people come home and complain about their leadership and complain about how they're being treated by their boss and still stay there for such a long time. It's amazing. But at the same time, I would say that IT professionals and IT management has become a little bit more savvy in terms of not wanting to lose their talent. So we're seeing an increase of better bosses out there and better leadership styles. But leadership also involves the direction the organization is going in too. Some DevNexus statistics. George Jetson, in case anyone doesn't know. 79% liked and loved their boss. That's good. 22% indifferent. My boss is okay. 9% were negative. I believe these numbers are skewed. Tell me why.
Because they attend this meeting.
People with good bosses.
Yeah, exactly. People who like their bosses got to go to DevNexus. So you're right. I mean, if they were such a bad boss, you wouldn't be there. And also, by the way, sometimes the boss was taking the survey next to the end of the. So it's a very good point. So that's the L. Let's talk about compensation. So for many, compensation is a primary motivator. But caution, more money is not always more money. And this is really, really important. There's, more money, 150K out in Silicon Valley is, I don't know. Down here in Atlanta, I would, it's not always the same amount. It's not 150K here, I'll tell you that. It's going to definitely be a big difference. But more important too, there's also other compensation components that one needs to consider in terms of benefits, in terms of, bonus potential, in terms of in terms of anything. The dollars are not even the same. Commute, we'll get to that in a couple moments, but commute's a big issue as well. So, but more money is not always more money, and this is where younger software engineers and programmers have the worst time, is that they are jumping from job to job because there's a lot of money being thrown at them. So let's talk about somebody who just graduates from Kennesaw University, for example. Decent computer science program. They're going to usually start in that 50-ish, give or take a little bit, out of school with a computer science degree, and then they're in a job for 3 months, and they're working with Spring Boot, and a recruiter sees it, and they can pay them $60K. So they make a move, and then now they're making $60K, $10K more than they got a few months ago. And then they get, after a year, they're getting $75K, and they have 4 or 5 job changes in the first 2 years. That's a great increase. The problem is that when you are at your prime, 3 to 5 years of experience. By the way, if you didn't know this, that's like the prime of when you want to get a developer, because they're not usually hitting the highest dollar amounts yet for a company, but usually you can get some great talent there that don't know they don't know they're that rock star yet. I used to call it the people that got the yellow ticket on American Idol, right? They were going to Hollywood, but they didn't know how great they were yet. That's usually those people in that bracket of 3 to 5 years, because there's still a lot of opportunity to glean the talent from them. And when you do that, just as important as the technology you worked with is going to be how stable you were during that beginning time. I promise you, when I look at a resume, and many of my clients look at a resume, we will not present resumes to clients that have 3 to 4 jobs in 2 years, unless A, we know there were contracts that were completed successfully, or B, the client allows us to do it because most of the time they're saying, look, we're looking to hire someone that's going to be with us for 2 to 3 years. It's not that we don't want to treat them well, but at the same time, we don't want somebody who's just constantly hopping jobs, and that's what it looks like. And there could be great reasons for all of them, by the way. Just make sure you're prepared to talk about that. But if the primary motivator for you, because let's face it, as much as we might love what we do, having a high C is not uncommon. It's a very important motivator for what we do. But if it's the only thing that's always looked at, you're always going to get paid more by somebody. So you better be really, 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 really good to never have an issue. And some people have been able to do that. They go from 3 months to 6 months. They make top dollar. They're always ensuring they're on the latest technology trend. But if you mess up, what happens is you get to 10, 15 years of experience, and there's times where it's more difficult, because not all jobs require your expertise. If somebody can do it with 3 years of experience, and somebody can and doesn't require a 10 to 15 year person, a business decision many companies make is to go with the more junior resource. So what is your value add that you're bringing? Those are some of the things that are important, and why. In making that investment in somebody, are they willing to commit back? Those are the kinds of unanswered questions between HR and the IT professional that we're still trying to make sense of today. Any questions? No? And also, this causes the most mistakes early in an IT career. Okay? So again, compensation, critical. 23% use changing employers to get a raise, by the way. So according to last year's salary survey, which is the DICE survey, I have last year's survey. In fact, I have it up here on the table if anyone wants to see it, or after the meeting. DICE has not released their 2017 survey that goes over 2016 salaries yet. They usually have it early. I'm surprised this year that it's so late, but it's probably one of the best salary surveys that are out there because of DICE's focus. Highest average salaries in IT in the country. Silicon Valley, no surprise here, 118K. New York, 106K. And this is averages, so you do the math. Probably better than I can. 105 for LA, 103 for Boston, 103 for Seattle, and down here in the corner, Atlanta. The average IT salary in Atlanta, it changed year over year from 2014 to 2015 to by 12.2%. There's been remember we talked about Atlanta being one of the more affordable places? Well, it's catching up because salaries are on the rise as well. I'll be very interested to see where Atlanta falls in 2016, but in 2015, the average IT salary in Atlanta was $97,238. So that's a big jump. Yep. Compensation, and again, it's DICE surveys based on their constituency, and it's all IT, but it usually includes all of that. I think I noted that here. U.S. average tech salaries were up 7.7% from 89,450 to 96,370 from 2014 to 2015. So big rise there. And Atlanta ranked number 12 compared to the other major IT metro areas in terms of salary, up from number 22 in 2014. So again, a lot of investment being made in the Atlanta area, with an average salary of $97,238, up 12.2% from last year.
For that big of a jump, that's a pretty big jump in 1 year. Is there like maybe one employer that's responsible for that? Or
I think what happened was Atlanta had a stagnant. Had a stagnant year. I think it went backwards the year before, so it picked up. It picked up after that. I think it was It was down 7, so it maybe had a net 5 over 3 years. Yeah. Good question. Other notable markets: Silicon Valley, New York, Raleigh, and I guess you can go to San Antonio if you want. The average IT salary is $73,469, but it's hot there too, so I don't know what you're getting. That is true. Another, this is more recent, Career Builder used 11,700 data points local to Atlanta to come up with the average Java salary, which is $98,884. And if you're like the top, and Java developer of all ranges, so your 1 and 2 year people and your 15 to 20 year people and everyone in between, but the 90th percentile are averaging about 138K. The lower 10%, probably the more junior resources, 60K. And right in the center is where the 100K that we typically see. Any questions?
Is that base comp, total comp?
Look at it as both. Yeah, it's usually both. I'll tell you one thing about Career Builders, and this is, by the way, there's a lot smarter people at Career Builder that come up with these. I met with the team there, and their analytics team is awesome. But they tend to be more conservative. Conservative on the numbers that I see. And the way I compare that is when we're talking to candidates about their salary expectations, it's usually higher than what Career Builder says are the averages. But again, these are averages. Everyone, people have different value based on other things that are broken down to much more than just a 1 or 2 skill sets.
What about vacation time? Because like you've been at a company for 12 years, you're getting, 7 weeks vacation or such that.
That could be important.
You go to a new company and they say, well, you got 2 weeks.
Most people don't go most people don't go. Now, granted, negotiating 7 weeks, I've yet to see. But negotiating the 3rd week, I almost always see. You never, and the reason you're leaving, listen, there's a reason why you're looking to leave. It's not because of their vacation policy, right? There's other things. So you have to ask yourself, is the technology more important than all the vacation I'm getting? And is this other company going to offer me the technology I want to be with? Then you decide that lifestyle trade-off. That's what the TLC4 is all about.
Do you see divergence between the average and the median, I guess? Because 1 or 2 highly compensated people could skew the average versus the median.
I agree. I mean, 11,700 data points is pretty good. You're right. So I don't see that. And I did ask a question at DevNexus as well. Let me see if that's on the next slide. Yeah. So here's what I didn't do at DevNexus. I wasn't expecting everyone to reveal to me over, on their salaries. But I did like many. And they asked for brackets. So here's the median bracket for those attending DevNexus in the Atlanta area, from a skill set standpoint. In the median, again, is not the average. The median is listed everybody from top to bottom or bottom to top, and the midpoint in there of the 479 fell right into this bracket here, 100 to 120K, which is right in line really. For most software development opportunities. And of course, you got architects and people certainly that made a lot more, and you had people that made less. Any questions? Okay. Commute, a primary motivator in Atlanta, would you agree? Partial telecommuting is more common, and 100% telecommute is still hard for managers. I was one of those managers that could not have people telecommute because I didn't know how to manage them. For a long time. And I came to a point that, just in terms of my own leadership training, I said to myself, if I can't manage people when I don't see them, then the problem isn't them and their productivity. It's really my my skill set that hasn't been developed yet in terms of managing remote workers. Now, there are exceptions to this because there are some environments. What's the excuse always given why you can't telecommute? And it's one. What? Collaboration, yes, collaboration, a good culture term. But and that's true. But gosh, look at all the money that's being spent on building all those collaboration tools that are available now.
But there are free open source pair programming tools.
Absolutely.
And collaboration with Slack. There's nothing I can do in the office that I can't do from my home.
Sure. Now, I don't think everyone wants to work 100% telecommute. In fact, I'll tell you, I don't. You know why I don't, but because my wife works harder than I do, but also because my team. I don't think all of them. We like the interaction with people, but partial telecommute is becoming more common, and 100% telecommute is still very hard for managers to accept, though. It's getting. Some companies are set up that way, and they're really used to it, but mainstream, I don't think it's as mainstream as it's going to get. unless you have multiple locations in multiple cities. But I wrote an article, or I guess a blog, and it's on LinkedIn if you want to see it. And basically, it's a blog that's basically IT companies are losing IT talent, and they're not getting the best potential employees because they don't allow for any telecommuting. They are clear and simple. Because if you allow for a little bit of flexibility, you're going to get an employee that needs some of that flexibility. And if you just lock it into the people that can be there from 9 to 5, I believe organizations are totally missing out on the best talent and the best culture matches for their organizations. But some companies are getting there, though. I think most of the clients we serve have some sort of allocation, and some companies realize the importance of getting there. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to meet their business objectives soon. DevNexus, 28% at least had some telecommute from those who attended DevNexus. And this is the 388 surveys on this one, actually. 5% of them had 100% telecommute. Still, not as many. 50% commute 1 to 10 miles. 39% commuted 11 to 20 miles. And 11% commute over 26 miles to work every day. So just to give you some perspective on what the Atlanta, and I'd say primarily Atlanta because that's where the majority of folks came from at DevNexus. Let me wrap it up here shortly. Hands-on versus hands-off, career path. This is really important for all of you. Some people have this urge to become a manager and a people leader, and there's a hands-off component to what you do. That's great, but you've got to go at it full swing because being hands-on, especially in technology, is typically where people find the most security throughout their entire career. So you have to really ensure that you want to go down you want to ensure as you're taking those leaps that you want to go down a technical path. Do you want to provide technical leadership? Do you want to still be hands-on in what you do every day? That doesn't mean you're coding 100% of the time, but as an architect, can you provide that technical expertise? Do you want to stay on that technical path? I will say that most people, 20, 30 years into it, find that there's more opportunities for them when they have remained hands-on because they can fall. It's not uncommon now to see somebody who is a CIO become a software engineer in their next job. I see that on LinkedIn all the time, actually. It's very common that somebody was a CIO for a company, but they loved coding, so they stayed hands-on enough that they can still maintain good employment doing that. So the more versatile you are and the more hands-on in terms of the hard skills, there's a lot of opportunity. However, there's some people who do exceptionally well in IT management and want that track as well. So solving business problems and other items from an IT management standpoint, an awesome career path as well. Again, it's what your preferences are, and making sure that frankly you have not only the passion for it, but you don't want to be so far away from it that it doesn't make sense to you anymore. That's my advice anyway. Technical or management. And is there a ceiling? In some places there's a ceiling based on the career path you're on. In some organizations, you're never going to necessarily become the CIO. If that's an objective of yours, you've got to ensure that after a certain period of time, if you know it's not going to happen there, and you've explored those opportunities in terms of management or director roles or architecture roles, if that's not the place, ensure that you're being true to yourself and what you're looking to do if you know you have the skill set to do it already. Culture. Work environment and core values. Collaboration. It's important. I don't want to downplay it, but collaboration is used a lot. Business dress or casual. Some companies still require that jacket and tie. Others have finally calmed down to the business casual. Some casual everyday, shorts and flip-flops. Attempts to oversell is common with culture. So, this is the hardest conversations I have with clients, is this. Oh, but our culture is awesome. Oh, they're going to love it here. Listen, we don't pay the best. But let me tell you what we do have. Friday beer fridge, ping pong. Now, these are all nice things, and some people like the ping pong, and some people like a more casual work environment. But at the same time, and the core values of an organization are exceptionally important. Thus, I'm with Thomson Technologies for 20 years because of the core values of the company I work for. Many of you may have experienced the same thing, but culture, unless you are just like a culture maniac And this is always going to, and this is the most important thing to you. It's not necessarily going to be the most attractive component. It's going to be important, don't get me wrong. People tend to want to work with their friends, and are less likely to leave a place where they have friends there, and they get along with their coworkers, and they like their boss. That's an important cultural component about where they work. But at the same time, if you are a manager and you're overselling your culture, it's just, as a recruiting company, I don't know how to do it. I mean, we can share what the great things that you do, the hackathons, which are great, all these other great components. But at the same time, you've got to have some emphasis on the other areas too. You've got to be competitive with your compensation. Otherwise, you won't attract the talent in many cases, because culture is important, but it's not the only bar. And some companies try to treat it like that. It's important, but just one piece of the pie. So, we talked a little bit about, we didn't go into details here. I mean, there's so many different topics we can go into, but just from a Q&A standpoint, and I want to obviously be sensitive to my timing, unless you don't. Should I not take questions, or am I good? Can I take a few questions? Okay. So questions from here. You got to show Yoda. Questions? Yes.
So how much is certification, technology certification, promoting the resume or portfolio?
Depends on the certification. Depends on the courses. So, for example, for network engineers, you have to have a Cisco certification of some sort these days. It's just a given. For software developers, it really depends. If let's say that you.
Let me give you an example of AWS certifications.
Valuable, exceptionally valuable. Yeah, if you're certified in AWS, that will add a lot of value. The demand for AWS skill sets right now across the whole package. And if you're certified in it, increases your market value tremendously. Java certification, the old-fashioned one, is still very well respected. But many people are also, if you're not going out for certifications, though, your skill set can be just as good. But it definitely speaks volumes for some of the more cutting-edge certifications. Yes.
Two questions. One is, if you've been in the business for a while, how far back, and how many jobs, or how far back should you go for your resume as far as jobs are concerned?
Yeah, that's a good question. Here's what I believe about resumes. There's a statistic that 70% of the people actually lie on their resumes in some way. I'm going to make a recommendation to you. Don't lie. And the reason for that is I can't tell you how many job offers I've had to remove over the last 20 years from people. I'll never forget, there was one sad story. There's one story, it broke my heart. There was a technology that was dying, and it was the Oracle. There was a database that Oracle bought. I think it was the VAX RDV database, if any of you remember what I'm talking about. It was an older database that was specific to the VAX VMS platform, which many of you may have not even heard of. And there was this one guy who was a Oracle RDB DBA, and I got his resume in the mail, and I knew a client that needed him, and I got him an interview, and he got the offer. He didn't need a degree for the job. But what did he do? He filled out the background paperwork, and he said he had a degree. And the poor guy was out of work for a year. And there was like maybe 4 of these jobs in the country of that left. They took the offer right away. And we see this regularly, lying on background check forms. They do education verifications. These things will definitely get you. So it's really important. So when you put a skill on your resume, it doesn't matter if it's required for the job or not. Be prepared to defend specifically what you did with it. Don't pad your resume with skills that have nothing to do with what you did, because otherwise you're just going to get pummeled in the interview. They're going to say this person can't live up. I had someone that was turned down for a job because they didn't have Excel experience for a business analyst role recently. Well, they put on their resume some really cool Excel skills that they couldn't project. It just so happened that the person that interviewed them was an Excel expert. So if you're going to put it there, be prepared to speak about it and be prepared to be able to speak to the skill set. The worst word you can use on a resume, by the way, is involved in. Involved in. Let me tell you, I'm involved in Java every day. I can't. You don't want me coding nothing. Okay, promise you. Promise you. Yeah, actually, no. Interest is actually better than involved in. Involved in. There's a lot of people that use the terminology involved in, and the problem with that is nobody wants to know what you were involved in. People want to know what you did. it's really important. You're involved. I mean, people are involved in everything. Involved in to me means I'm sitting behind somebody who's actually doing it. So those resumes typically by my clients hit the reject pile for that reason. So something to be.
I hate to ask again, but if you have been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay, and so would you keep 10 years worth of job, 15 years, 20, how far back?
You know, I can't answer that question. I can't give you the best advice for that because I think that there's a lot of value to somebody who, for example, is a software engineer that started out in C, moved up to C++, became a Java developer, and is now implementing microservices. Man, that's a powerful career. I mean, they know everything. They're computer science to the max. That is something that's great. The concern, of course, is for age discrimination, right? I mean, people want to make sure that, are they just turning me down? Oh, there's too much experience. I will say this, that if you get to an interview, if they really want somebody with 3 to 5 years of experience, because that's the sweet spot, because it's not too expensive yet, even if you're willing to take less, it just is the career path that usually how you finagle your resume isn't necessarily going to get you that particular role, unfortunately. So I would say, I like to tell people, tell people to take irrelevant jobs off their resume. And frankly, if you want to put the last 15 years, I don't have any problem with that. I think that that's fine, especially if it's for a senior level role. But I wouldn't take down the resume for a junior. I wouldn't take down the resume for more of a junior mid-level role if you're a senior resource. I think that 10 years of experience is fine. And I think the farther you go back, I mean, if you were a COBOL programmer for a while, great. That can be like one bullet point on page 2 of your resume and just go from there. But I wish there was a science to it, because if somebody's going to, yeah, you do. It is. Just take irrelevant stuff off.
And as a follow-up question, as a senior, I understand for juniors and for mid-level and for entry, obviously companies are going to make you take a Java test. But if you've been in the industry for 10 or so years, what's the average, like companies want you to take a test?
I hate to say it. It's becoming more and more.
I'm seeing it more, which I'm like, I've got a certificate in Java.
I know. Yeah, it's 70. I would say, what would you say, Priscilla? 75% of our clients are asking for some type of assessment these days. 75%. Yeah, it really comes to, and it's really, some of it is really textbook stuff, and that you obviously know how to do the work. You've been doing it, but because you can't remember this particular syntax or this from, or the exact word-for-word definition of polymorphism, should you be penalized for that? Probably not.
I had a guy tell me that, I was unacceptable because I was looking, I Googled something on Stack Overflow, and they said you can't look at Stack Overflow.
Not for a technical test. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. That's what people are doing.
They said you could use the internet.
Oh, they did. Oh, okay. They just said not Stack Overflow, but not Stack Overflow.
You just got to be the first thing you do.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, I mean, there's but there's also a lot of there's the assessment situation. I wish there was an answer for it. We have people that say, well, I won't take tests, and some people are fine with pushing their career forward without it. Some people do better on tests than others, but it's becoming more and more of something that they want from a validation standpoint. Yes.
After the interview, what are your thoughts about after the interview?
Oh, and what you do next?
No, I mean, like follow up with the...
Yeah. So let me tell you. There's something back, and now this is gonna date me a little bit. But there was something we used to write called the thank you note. And what it was this little card, paper, and we used to write on it, thank you so much for your time, I really enjoyed. Now here's the thing, in IT, the good news is you really don't have to use handwritten anymore. You don't. In fact, I recommend that you don't in IT. Because I mean, my handwriting would certainly not get me the job. But in IT, because of its nature, you can send an email as a thank you. But you want to make sure that's a well thought out note. Every time we send somebody out to an interview, we have an interview prep sheet. And the bottom part is what Tim Smith, the president of our company, wrote as it relates to how to write a thank you note and how to construct that note. And before you go in for the interview, prepare to write that thank you note by gathering information from the interview that you can apply. Because if people don't think you're interested, you may not. What if you didn't seem as interested as somebody else? Well, maybe that thank you note is what sets you apart. It's very, very, some of the basics, like bringing a resume to an interview, dressing appropriately. I'm not saying you have to suit up, because some environments are not always suit up. Check with the recruiter whether it's the corporate recruiter or the agency recruiter, on how you should present yourself. But bring copies of that resume, dress appropriately for the opportunity, be professional during the interview. Don't drop the cuss words during the interview is my recommendation. No, I'm being sincere. Now listen, sometimes sometimes in some environments that's acceptable. But boy, but I can tell you, there's a lot of times we'll get that call afterwards. Oh my gosh, this guy just dropped the F-bomb 4 times during the interview. He's a great resource, but that's just, it was a little much. Some very basic, you may feel like you've got the skills. And many, not just feel like you got the skills, you've been told you've got the skills, you've got the ability to be anything you want to be from a technologist perspective. But how you present that and how you can go into an interview letting the organization know that you can solve their business problem for why their position is open. That is a differentiator between you getting the job or somebody else. Whether you're a janitor or whether you're a CTO or whether you're a programmer on the team. Nobody just creates jobs for job creation's sake. It's there because there's a business problem. So the answer to the interview question is, can you solve this business problem? And if you go in with how you can apply your skills and knowledge to solving the problem, then that's really going to bring you the most success. That's the best advice I can give anybody in terms of being prepared for the interview. Am I okay? I'm sorry, Glenn, am I okay to take a couple more questions, or should I? Okay, I just want to make sure. Go ahead.
So back to talking about not padding or being accurate concerning what you present on your resume.
Yes.
I've had recruiters that encourage you to change your resume based on the job you were seeking. How do you handle that?
So the encouragement to state experience that you actually have, this is the question you have to ask yourself before you put a statement on your resume. Can I quantify this specific experience? Don't put Spark on your resume if you've never used Spark. Don't put Docker on your resume if you haven't used Docker. It's not going to do you any good, because some recruiter that has very little experience in looking at a resume is going to pick you up in a search. They're going to present you, and you're going to be expecting a skill set that you don't have. So my recommendation is if a recruiter just wants you to change something for them to get the interview, you obviously know that you don't want to present any skill set. You don't want to embellish your skills. You don't want to make it bigger than it is, and you want to present yourself accurately. And not all skills require your expertise. Here's the best part for Java developers right now. Anyone that has a Java as their core language right now is this. This is the time in all the areas we spoke about tonight where with big data, with microservices, cloud technology, mobile technology, front-end web technology, these are times that they're not requiring necessarily the experience in advance for you to transition your current skill set. This is the opportunity to try to take that skill set and leverage it into that next opportunity. You don't have to make yourself bigger than you are. You just have to show your passion for wanting to do it in many cases. And you can take what you've done and apply it, as opposed to but if a recruiter's telling you to change something and put something there that's not true, hang up the phone. By the way, there's another blog I have out there, not that I advertise my blogs. Listen, they're not that awesome, but one of them out there is you should be interviewing your technical recruiter to make sure they're doing a good job for you. You just shouldn't let anybody just take your resume and throw it places and put your career out there and represent you. You want to make sure that you're working with somebody that truly does have your best interest at heart.
What about length? I know most places say like 2 pages.
I think 2 to 3 pages is fine. I think when you start getting into 4, 5, 6, and 7 pages, there's an issue. You shouldn't, remember, one of the things that a lot of people do is they describe the project itself. Nobody really wants to read that. A lot of people will say, AT&T is a large telecommunication company, and stuff that people already know. That stuff is, it's all. What did you do? What can you quantify what you did? Developed this, maintain that, led this initiative. What did you do? Your resume should not encompass all the details of the project. That's something you talk about on the interview and how you were able to impact it, but it's all based on you. It's a snapshot into who you are professionally. So keeping that in mind, the more recent stuff should probably be the longer sections, and then the second and third page, if you're going back 10, 15 years, there's no reason to write the gospel on what you did 15 years ago. I love to think that the placements I made 15 years ago anybody cares about besides me, and they don't. They don't care about what I did 15 years ago. They care what I did. My boss cares what I did a couple of years ago and over the last few years. What did I do for them lately?
So next 5 years down the line,
Yeah.
where we are seeing the Java market, right?
So I think that from what I'm reading, and again, this is the trends, and this will be the last question. By the way, I'm going to be here afterwards for a little while. If anyone wants to come up and talk to me and wants to look at the survey, and we're going to do the drawing in just a moment. Priscilla's here as well. Thank you again for the opportunity. But to answer your question, I do think that while Java has so much has had so much traction over the last 20 years, that there is plenty of legacy code jobs that are going to be there for a long time. They're not going to be the best. I think you'll be employed. Let's put it that way. Java's going to be some that if you don't want to move forward with other technologies and you're happy with what you're doing right now, you will be employed, I believe, with Java and your Java skills. How robust you want to make your career. I think that just someone who's when I say just a Java developer, remember, I'm not saying just a Java developer, but the number of I'm a Java developer jobs, just like I'm a Python developer, or I was a Perl developer, or I'm a C programmer, getting jobs like that are just becoming rarer. So I think Java's got a ways to go before we get there, but I think there will be a decline in more of the standard Java development jobs, and it's going to be more focused in specialty areas like the ones we discussed this evening, over the next 5 years. All right. Well, anyway, thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it, and we're here available for you. Thanks.